this is Tom, aka Gedeon, here for Star Frontiers Gamer. And today we have as a special guest Darrin Drader, who worked for Wizards of the Coast, as well as freelanced all over the RPG ecosphere, co-authored a number of books from Exalted Deeds to Forgotten Realms, Serpent Kingdoms, Forgotten Realms, Mysteries of the Moonsea, D20 Modern Apocalypse, several Oathbound books, Barton Press, Grave Knight for Piazzo, as well as writing articles for them. You contributed 25 monsters for Kobold's press tome of Beast 2.
Yep.
And you've worked on the Alternity 2E for Sasquatch Games.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
So my first question is always, how did you get into RPGs, and what is your favorite genre of gaming?
Okay, so RPGs. This is back in 1984. I had actually, I met my best friend when I was 4 years old, and at 7 years old, he moved away. And then in 1984, he and his mother came back to town for a visit. And we literally had like a 3-day weekend where we had nothing to do. And he's digging through my stuff. And I had just happened to have had, or picked up the old basic red box from Toys R Us and a module, The Lost City. And he's going through it. And I remember I had taken this thing out and puzzled over it many times, trying to figure out how this is supposed to work or what you're supposed to do. And it never really clicked with me because I was too young. And then, so he came in, he introduced me to it and ran me through The Lost City. And then I had such a blast. So we went out to the bookstore and we bought the next one, which was Horror on the Hill. We ran through that. And at that point, I was absolutely freaking hooked. I spent every dollar of allowance money, on RPG stuff after that. I went and got the monster manual, the DM's guide, and, this module and that module. And next thing you knew, I had the biggest RPG collection. And then, of course, he had only been in town temporarily. So, he left again. And I was sitting here scrounging around for a group to play with, which wouldn't happen for a few more years. So in the meantime, I was just kind of sitting here making characters and reading books and, wishing that I had a group.
Right.
So anyway, that's how I got into it.
And now you write, you freelance and write, and you've even
Mm-hmm.
worked for Wizards of the Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that I think is on everybody's mind is that there's a lot of developments with Wizards of the Coast. Chris Cox is elevated to CEO of Hasbro now. There's a new president at Wizards of the Coast. They've bought D&D Beyond, and it's created quite the stir in the RPG pond. Where do you think Wizards of the Coast is heading, and what is the future for the company in 5e, in your opinion?
Well, I think they're in a good spot right now, and they're headed in a great direction in terms of being stable. Because when I was there from 2000 to 2004. That was a period shortly after the Hasbro buyout. There were rolling layoffs. Like, you might be sitting next to a person, you didn't know if they're going to be there from 1 week to the next. They had gotten rid of like absolute legends in the field, like Jeff Grubb, Monty Cook, Sean K. Reynolds. I mean, I think Monty Cook actually showed himself the door, but that's beside the point. The bottom line is that for a long time, it was just cut and cut and cut and cut and cut. And it was really hard for them to maintain stability and good brand management. And they actually did. They were smart in, who they promoted into the brand manager position when that came open. I remember when Charles Ryan took over, he had been part of the R&D department. And then he got the job there, and, so he led them in a good direction. But still, things weren't really good for them for at least from the D&D perspective at WotC until 5e happened. And that's because 5e has just been massively popular. Yeah. So yeah, they were in the position where they were able to buy up D&D Beyond. Right now they're in the position where they're able to keep this edition of D&D going for quite a while. I mean, you look at 4E, which wasn't very popular. That one started in 2008 and it was replaced by 5e 7 years later. We're already, we're about the 7-year mark right now, and they're basically just going to do a new edition of the book. I wouldn't say new edition. They're going to do some new revisions of the book and probably keep it alive for at least another 3 to 5 years. They're in no in no hurry to hit the edition switch button right now because they're doing so well, and it's gotten into popular culture to a point where it's almost like any edition switching they're going to do right now, it would just hurt them. Right. So, keep riding that wave is what they're doing. Yeah. So yeah, I think they're in a very good spot, and in general, it's good for the industry. D&D does well, RPGs in general do well. So yeah, I wish them luck.
It's kind of that rising tide lifts all boats.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
Now, this is Star Frontiers Gamer, so the thing that's always on my mind is: do you think Wizards of the Coast will ever release a rebooted Star Frontiers? And is it inevitable that it'll be a 5e reboot?
I don't think we're going to see Star Frontiers for 5e. I just, because what are they going to do? Seriously, you've got the PDFs that are available. They were free, but now I think you got to pay for them. Anyway, whatever. There's not a ton. There's a certain amount of information that's already out there. The core books, the old modules, stuff like that. Anybody can go grab it. That means the only thing that you really need to do to play Star Frontiers in 5e, if you've got the old material, is convert the different alien races that you can play over to 5e. And that's something that anybody can do. I could design that in my sleep. So if you want to right now, you could do it. You know what I'm saying? And I always thought Star Frontiers has kind of a nice, unique, fun IP, but it's not an expansive IP. You don't have like 40 different villains. You don't have, a ton of different monsters that you're going to fight. A lot of Star Frontiers is kind of do it yourself based on the limited amount of information that they gave us. So I'd have a hard time seeing where Wizards would go to take Star Frontiers and make it marketable to today's 5e audience. Now, do I think they're ever going to do it again? If you would have asked me a couple years ago, are they going to do Spelljammer? I would have said no. So I could very well be wrong. And, given the fact there's been some controversy lately regarding Star Frontiers, I'd say there's obviously some interest. And they also they would have a definite interest in preserving their rights to their IP. That would actually give them some reason to release something. Right. But, it's kind of like staring into a crystal ball and trying to figure out, what's going to happen in the future. I don't know. I would say odds are probably against it, but I could be totally wrong.
Well, I, for one, hope you're wrong. So can I assume that you're a fan of Star Frontiers since you wrote a D20 article on the Sathar? And if so, what's your favorite player character race?
I am definitely a fan of Star Frontiers. That was my first science fiction role-playing game. Got that shortly after I started playing, or playing D&D, I should say. So I would say that favorite race is probably the Vrusk. And it's just because at the time, it's not that unusual now, but at the time it's like, well, we're going to take an insect race. Excuse me. We're going to take an insect race and make it a playable character. And, and honestly, it's been so long. I forget what it was they had like culturally going for or whatnot, but it's just kind of this idea that you've got, these space insects that are hanging out with humans and all these, all these other ones. And yeah, everybody's cool with it. We're all good here.
Yeah. I always thought that the player character races in Star Frontiers were some of the best that I'd encountered in sci-fi RPGs. Now, originally when I invited you on the show, it was because of the article. It was a D20 article that you had written back when D20 Modern incorporated, D20, or was it D20 Future incorporated the Star Frontiers aliens into their setting, and it was about the Sathar, and I just thought that was the coolest take on them when they reach 0 stamina. The nanites within them explode and they just blast guts and viscera over anybody, presumably player characters standing in front of them. I thought that was a nice take versus that they would do suicide to prevent capture. I
Right.
just thought that's a much better way to go. So my question is have you used that in the game? Did you get to play test that at all?
Unfortunately, I did not get to play test it. I have not used it in the game.
I can't wait to use it.
that whole thing came about. Honestly, I can't even take credit for that. That came about because I was working in the WotC offices at that time, and they had just put out D20 Future, and I looked at it and was like, "Hey, cool! Dralizites, Rusk, yeah, cool. No Sathar? How do you do this without Sathar?" So I talked to Chris Perkins, and I was like, you guys forgot the Sathar, right? And he was like, yeah, well, we were thinking about maybe this or that or the other thing. And I was like, I'd be happy to write a web enhancement. He's like, that sounds like a good idea. And that kind of snowballed into what we ended up with. But we were just kind of sitting around at his desk having a brainstorming session. And he's the one that came up with the idea of having the nanites that explode when they hit 0 hit points. And we both had a great big laugh over that. And we said, yeah, we got to do that.
It's much cooler than they just commit suicide to prevent capture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, definitely a lot of fun. And, things exploding, guts all over you. It's creepy. And I kind of like that in my Sathar, that they're slimy, they're creepy. So definitely, to me, that worked. And we certainly want to, I'll try to put a link in the show notes for that, for any Star Frontiers player out there who hasn't seen it. Now, I was looking at something you wrote. It was called Reign of Discordia. And one of the, as I was looking at it, it's a sci-fi RPG, but it felt like a slice of Traveler. It felt like a slice of Star Frontiers and a slice of Firefly. What was your inspiration for Reign of Concordia? Because I thought it was really cool.
Okay, so Reign of Discordia started out with this is about 2007, 2008 somewhere. We actually released in 2008, and basically True 20 was big at that time, or was, I wouldn't say big, but was kind of getting a foothold at that time, and they were like big on let's do some settings for it and that type of thing. And Dave Jarvis, at the time it was Reality Deviant Publications, now it is Gunmetal Games. And I had recently joined the Were Cabbage group, which has done a ton of writing for Paizo. So anyway, Dave Jarvis comes to me and says, I heard that you've had this idea kicking around for a space opera setting. And I was like, well, I've had this idea kicking around for doing a space opera setting. I wouldn't say I have anything, solid for it. But he's like, would you like to write it? And I was like, well, of course I'd like to write it. So cue like about a week's worth of taking some pretty big long walks and kind of figuring it out. But the core concept that I kind of hit upon and thought was, something to work with was, what happens if you've got an evil empire and it falls, and then there's nobody to pick up the pieces? In other words, you don't have a new republic to come in here and impose order, or if not impose order, at least try to get people to agree to some sort of an orderly government. What if everybody just goes all in for themselves? And what if you still have this existential threat to your entire civilization that's still out there and really wants to kill you pretty bad? So that was kind of the fundamental. So I would say that there, in addition to those influences you had mentioned, and they were all influences, every single one of them. In addition to that, I'd say that Star Wars is a little bit of an influence as well. So.
Now, rumor has it that you're actually doing a second edition of Reign of Discordia.
We are. It's going right now. We just launched, so we actually haven't hit the major news sites yet. We haven't gotten a ton of press, but we're up to about $2,000, 58 backers right now. Actually, we're at $1,897 as of this moment. Hopefully, we'll be hitting 2,000 later today. And then, like I said, we're going to be hitting the news sites. Hopefully, people see this interview and get interested and come and help us out. We got a goal of 8,500, so we got a little ways to go. I'm pretty confident that we're going to hit that. And then what we're going to do is it's going to be a second edition. Second edition, we're going to have two books actually. One is going to be 5e compatible. The other one is going to be White Star compatible. Are you familiar with White Star at all?
A little bit. I've bought one of their not the rules, but supplements, and was just stealing ideas.
Yeah, I mean, White Star is basically you take the it's part of the OSR. So White Star, you take the old white box D&D and then adapt it to the space opera setting, and that's White Star. And if you like OSR, it's a really good set of rules. It's a lot of fun. It's really easy to design for. And for the past 5 months, I've been doing a lot of content for Fainting Goat Games White Star support magazine called Blaster Bolts. So after doing all this work for White Star, I said, if I'm going to do Reign of Discordia again, I got to give White Star some love. So, and that's that. And the 5e one, I'm really excited about too, because honestly, that's where most of the players are going to be at. So, if you play 5e, this will be a way to play 5e in a space opera setting.
Right.
And we're also advancing the timeline for 5 years from where it was when the first one came out. And I'd had like this progression of plot points, which I really never got past the first one with the initial set of products. So this 5-year jump that we're doing right here is not something new that we came up with just so we could do another product. This is something that's always intended to be a part of this setting. And
cool.
Now we're getting the opportunity to actually do it.
So you'll need to send me the link for the Kickstarter, and I'll put that in the show notes as well, so people can check it out, because we'll be releasing this video this coming week.
Cool.
So I know people will want to check that out. Now, I noticed in Reign of Discordia that you had 6 playable species, and I find that creating sci-fi species a challenge, because I go back and I go, what I just created, I feel like it sucks compared to Dralasites, Yazarians, and Vrsk, the Vrsk. And so I'm curious, what is the special sauce that you use for creating, how do you approach creating a playable player character alien species?
It's not the easiest thing in the world.
I agree.
Basically, you've got to kind of ask yourself what possible combinations could come about. For instance, we've got the Lamagos, who are very similar to humans in so many ways. They have blue skin. The blue skin kind of goes along with the blue star that their planet orbits. But they're kind of meant to be sort of like a foil for the humans. They're kind of the space totalitarians. And even when the humans and them were all working in the same direction, they were never particularly nice guys in general. Individuals are completely different. You can play these guys, they can be part of a party. But in general, the Lamagos are the space fascists, or initially they were actually modeled after the Soviet Union, the Russians back in those days. So they were easy.
Okay.
Then you get to, I've got my insect race. They were, again, you kind of think about, hive species and how they might work, and how you've got these guys who, they've got their queen who kind of controls their society. And then if there's an individual who's needed for a specific purpose, she can change their form. And so they'll be like physically different from others their type, and then they can go out there and do that type of thing. So we've got that one. We've got the Sangor, who are the squishy ones. They came from a world where there are very few natural predators. And so because of that, they themselves are not particularly tough, but they're very intelligent, and they're really good with engineering things. So it's like because they went from basically a Stone Age society to advanced tech overnight, because I believe it was the Lamagos came in, left them with a bunch of stuff there, found that they couldn't get these guys to work, to do what they wanted them to do. And rather than slaughter them all, they just said to heck with it. So they left a bunch of their stuff behind. And then the Sangor came and like reverse engineered it all. And next thing you know, they've got spaceships. So basically what it comes down to is, I try to come up with, sometimes it's like, what if we take an existing animal in the, from nature and make them more advanced, more intelligent, and more capable. Sometimes that's an approach. Sometimes it's just how weird can we make them, which is definitely the case with Sangor. And those are kind of the two approaches. I'm trying not to do anybody like, I'm trying not to have any more. They're like the Lamagos, where they're just like humans that, with bumpy heads, and one of the things I'm going to be doing for this Kickstarter is I actually had a document that I had started back when we were doing this the first time, and it was a book that had gotten canceled,
Right.
which was where I was taking some of these other alien races that are kind of mentioned in a very generic way, but were never developed, and I was writing them up, and I'm going to be taking that, and I'm going to be including some, if not all of them in with this as additional playable races. So I think we had 6 in the original. This one's going to have more.
Wow. So you're really expanding the setting with this second edition.
Mm-hmm. Expanding the setting, advancing the timeline. Yeah.
So, I'm actually pretty excited about that. And one other question I had was, if you were going to run a Star Frontiers game today in a D20 system, what rule set would you use?
Well, it's a good chance I'd go 5e. It's a good chance I'd go White Star. That's probably the direction I'd go.
Well, I'll have to check out more White Star. I did enjoy the product I purchased, but again, I'm kind of steal ideas from everywhere.
I've always been a fan of old school, so like first edition, second edition, basic, all that stuff. I've always really felt that was a really nice rule set, in that the action happens fast. You get to do a lot of things in one session. Because when third edition came out, Ryan Dancy, who was the brand manager at that time and was actually a big part of making the OGL happen in the first place.
Right.
He had described D&D third edition as half an hour of fun condensed into 4 hours. So, and I think that's pretty accurate, because you sit down for 4 hours and you might run through 3 or 4 encounters. You go back to your basic rule set, and you can sit down for 4 hours and run through like 3/4 of a module or a full module. It's just, we're sitting down, rolling dice. It's not overly complicated. Go, Yeah. And it's one of those things where we've come closer to that with 5th edition. The only thing that really drags 5th edition down is all of the arguments that erupt over whether or not something actually gets advantage or disadvantage.
Well, I think in those circumstances, you really just got to put the master back in Dungeon Master, and just he makes the ruling and you roll with it. But funny you mentioned the slowness of 3rd edition. I had been away from RPGs and then found a group and said, yeah, I used to play D&D, but I had stopped playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, when I stopped. And so I got into it. And, we'd have rotating game master, and the guy who was game mastering, his wife was demanding that he go to dance school with her. So he'd be a half an hour late. And I said, well, you know what? I got this fun sci-fi game, and I brought Star Frontiers and was running it for 30 minutes till he got there. And one night we had 2 combats, we had a skill challenge, and we had a role play all in 30 minutes. And I thought, oh my God, this was so much fun. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to have the watch paint dry.
Yeah.
3.5. And so that for me was the seminal moment where I really became a whole hog fan of Star Frontiers and was like, this is the greatest RPG ever because it's fast play,
Well,
and
it's also just a really elegant system. Everything's percentile. I mean, and you think about it, it doesn't matter if you're talking D20 or 3D6 or whatever. Everything you do comes down to a percentage. What is the percentage chance of you being successful at this thing? Star Frontiers just says, all right, we're going to take this and break it down to a simple percentage system. So you roll your 2d10, success or fail, roll damage or don't, whatever happens. And I love that about it. And I've always been a big fan of a D percentile system, and I've always kind of threatened to write my own one of these days.
well, once you've everything's on the character sheet, and once you've done a few combats, you don't even have to look at the rule book, honestly.
Yeah.
You're rolling right from the character sheet. There's no looking up tables, so it just moves fast, and that's what I truly love about that game.
Mm-hmm.
But so thanks for coming on the show. This has been great, and I really hope that the people watching will go out and check out that Reign of Discordia 2nd edition Kickstarter. We'll make sure we put a link in the show notes, and I'm going to see if I can't get a link for that D20 article and have that in the show notes as well, if that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
But so thanks for coming on the show. I want to thank our subscribers. You guys are great, and anybody who watched to this point. And we'll see you in the frontier. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the listening audience?
Well, about the only thing else I can really say regarding the Kickstarter is that we tried to price this thing so it was very reasonable. For $20, you can choose to get either the White Star or the 5e edition. $45, you get them both. Plus, at the $45 level, we're not doing printed books on this one simply because of the volatility in the printed market right now.
Okay.
However, you go in at the $45 level, you're getting offered print on demand at cost. Meaning that
nice.
We're not taking another dime from you to get the hardcover or to get the hard copies on these. You pay what it would cost us, and that's only at the $45 level. We're going to put a little bit of profit in there at the $20 level. Sorry.
that's actually a cool feature. I got to say I really appreciate that. Because the economy is volatile right now, and money gets tight, and you only have so much in your budget for Kickstarters.
You're
gonna ration it out.
I get it. Times are tough all over right now because we had COVID and so on and so forth. I don't want to get into everything, but no, I mean, like I said, maybe some people's pockets aren't as deep as they used to be, and we tried to be sensitive to that. And, at the same time, we're also kind of here to make money. So we tried to strike a balance there. And I think we did a pretty good job. So.
All right. Well, again, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for being a fan and digging up that old D20 article and saying, hey, this is no longer out there available. But the fans would appreciate having it. And because I think we do. I can speak for myself, but I think the fan community does. And so, again, thanks for being a frontiersman and champion of the frontier and coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right.